Welcome into Other People's Shoes, the podcast where listeners get to step into the lives of others and see the world through their shoes. Your host, Neil Matthews, is a seasoned interviewer who has a natural talent for empathizing with his guests and drawing out their unique perspectives. Through a combination of storytelling and insightful questioning, Other People's Shoes explores the lives of a diverse range of guests, from everyday people to celebrities and thought leaders. With a warm and welcoming style, Neil creates a safe and supportive space for his guests to share their stories, while also challenging listeners to broaden their perspective and think more deeply about the world around them. So tune in to Other People's Shoes with Neil Matthews and get ready to step into other people's shoes.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I'm your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for hitting play today. Really excited, really grateful. In fact, today, very much so today, we start. You should volunteer for this. In fact, you should do for the next, month or so. That seems fitting. The next, 30 days. That's how you get a good habit going, a good change of pace going. You should do for the next 30 days something you're grateful for, something you're thankful for. For some of you, you're like, I'm not volunteering for that. That sounds awful. Neil, you don't understand all the things that I have to do. I have to get my cat, my wild cat. It's so wild. I have to get it to the vet. I have to get it to all these things. Neil, I have to do this. I have to do that. You don't understand. I get it. So I'm going to share a sad story with you. Way back in the last part of August, my wife and I actually made the decision to put our dog down of 16 years. Now, I know that bums people out already. His name was Coda, named after Ed Coda, who played at the University of where? You could probably guess, North Carolina. That's a tribute to him, the Wildcat thing. Or could it be maybe my guest today? Help me welcome her in all the way from the volunteer state. She's not wearing orange, but she's willing to wear Tennessee orange for him. We'll hear more about that momentarily. Welcome in my new friend, Hannah. Hannah, how are you today?
Hey, Neil, it's so good to be here. I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
Well, let's get down to the business at hand. Our good friend Amber, way back on October 17th, I had to put research on this. They just slipped me a note right before we hit record. October 17th, 2020.
What?
Amber was on with us. Amber, I always say her name wrong.
Amber Colum.
That was a long time ago. Do you remember where you were on October 7th, 2020? It was a Wednesday, if that helps any.
It was probably locked in the house somewhere.
Right? We all were.
Praying for toilet paper.
Probably, because Costco had just run out. I'm sure.
Right.
No, so Amber was in our series called What Happened When? And so she told about this adventure that she was on. Actually, I believe it was a missions trip that affected her on May 29th, 2006. That was her date. Everyone in that series had a date. It happened to them on a specific date. So we used that date as the title. Amber, great gal. Also a Wildcats fan.
Yes.
She is. She bleeds blue. And that's okay, I think.
These Kentucky girls got to stay together.
That's what I hear. What style of shoe do you love to wear?
So I am such a grandma at heart. My kids make fun of me. And I'm a former teacher, so let me just preface that. I love these Crocs like slides, not the ugly ones with the holes, but they're like these cushy sandals that kind of, and some of them look like Hey Dudes. And when you're on your feet 8 to 10 hours a day, I know, I'm over here trying to just justify it. I know. I see you crying. I see the tears. I have to be honest. That's my go-to. And once upon a time, I'm 5'2", by the way. So once upon a time, I would wear heels every day. And then I hit 30 and it was Crocs.
How do you go from stilettos to those? I just Googled it because I was like, they have Crocs slides now. Stop the epidemic.
Yes. And they're so comfortable. The ones that look like Hey Dudes feel like butter on your feet. Like I can't express to you. I know. It's just, my kids make fun of me. My husband makes fun of me. I save my cute shoes, like my cute heels, wedges for church, like Sunday morning. That's what I save. Or dates. If I'm going on a date with my hubby, I will wear cute shoes for him.
So you wear cute shoes for him, but you won't wear Tennessee orange for him?
I know. Yes. Maybe one day we're going to have to pray through that.
People don't realize that, but it is a thing. I get it
is
all
a
the time.
thing. Oh,
Yeah, one of the
thanks.
hottest things my wife has ever worn is she wore a North Carolina tank top. So I'm just saying.
So who does she cheer for?
She doesn't have a team. That's the best part.
Oh.
So she could easily jump on the wagon.
So it's, yeah.
Hannah, help us with this because we are in this series called You're Only. We've done a number of these episodes now. We're 250 and counting. Now we can officially say that. But in that, what I'm wondering about for you is when you heard about us kind of talking about You're Only, how does that fit into you and what you're about?
My first response was, you're only young once. That kind of stuck out to me. And another one was, you're only a girl. And I felt like both of those statements were kind of limiting. When you say you're only something, it's trying to put you in a box. That's a lie. That's not true. I think for me, as an author, as a writer, I speak and teach and minister to, invest in young ladies, women of all ages. Specifically, the work I'm working on right now is targeted toward young ladies. I remember being that age and thinking, I'm young. I'm only young. What can I do? And then I'm a girl. And what can I do? It's a man's world. What can a girl do here? And I want to talk about those statements and what they mean and how they're lies. As a believer, I'm a Christian. I'm a Jesus follower. I believe God says, okay, you're young. Awesome. I got awesome things for you to do. You're a girl. Hey, let me tell you what I say about you and what you can do. And that's how it fits into who I am and what I do.
I feel like especially right now, more than ever, it feels like, I mean, I'm 44 almost. It seems to be the hot button topic for folks, this identity crisis that the kids are in. I'm trying not to be funny here or flippant. It just seems like kids today, you know what? I want to be a lion.
Yeah.
What? I'm waiting for the kid to say, no, I want to be a penguin. Okay.
Right.
Where's it going to stop? And I don't think it's going to stop. And so that's the part that gets me fired up as a parent is my daughter's 16 now. 10 years from now, what is her world going to look like? 5 years from now, what's her world going to look like? A year from now, what's her world going to look like? And I'm not talking about socially, economically. I'm not talking, I am sort of talking about those things. But the flip side of that is what is her identity going to look like when she graduates from high school?
Right.
My wife and I are on a quest right now. And I call it a quest because it seems more exciting when it's a quest.
Indeed.
Maybe an adventure even. We're on a quest right now for the next 2 years to really pour into her and to really have her stand on her own. So when she does leave this proverbial nest of us, she's ready. Now she's ready academically. She's ready financially. She's ready to make good life choices, whether they're good or bad, whether they're Christ choices or they're not. We're preparing her for that right now, and she doesn't even know it. It's a secret. Don't tell her. But when you hear that as a parent, as an educator, as all the facets of Hannah, are we doing right by that, or help me with that?
Gosh, I am a former teacher. I taught middle school and high school for different seasons of my life. And now I'm in vocational ministry full-time, pouring into girls and media marketing communications, that world. And I have 3 kids. I have a 20-year-old, I have an 18-year-old, I have a 13-year-old. I've worked with kids for, since I was a kid. We are facing an identity crisis. There's something that sounds very loving about saying, hey, be whatever you want to be. Do whatever you want to do. That actually is quite unloving. If you are just putting no limits, no boundaries, speaking no truth to your children, goodness, we are going down this slope of, oh my word, I don't even know. There is no truth. And that's not true. The identity crisis that we're facing is serious. To not speak truth and love to our children is completely unloving. It's not the best that we can do. And so there are things that are true. There are things that we need to be able to say that's true. Like, you're a boy, you're a girl. I love you. You are made in God's image. God has plans for your life. If you are struggling with your identity in some way, let's talk about that. When we're talking about identity as well, we often use it in terms of gender. I'm more than just a woman. You are more than just a man. And so when we put them in those terms, that's even an interesting topic to go down into. Preparing our children is a challenge. And I ask for wisdom in that as I'm doing that, doing the best that I can to pour into who they are. As a follower of Jesus, I believe that his word is what is true. And what does God say about my kids? That's what I'm pouring into them. That's what I'm pouring into the students that I get to work with. And there are specific truths. God says that you are a co-heir with him. He says that you are gifted, that you have specific gifts that he's given. He says that you are planned for. You were made with a purpose. You're royal even. If you're a co-heir and he's our king, then you are royal. You have this status. And these aren't just these fantasy things that I'm saying to build you up, which it's great if they do. They are truths. They are very specific truths, and they have meaning for your life, and they ground you and give you direction. When we go through our lives, the seasons change. Once upon a time, I was only a teenager. I was only a young mom. I was only a military wife. I was only a teacher. These things change. They're not my identity. And our students, our children, the generations that are around us right now, they're saying, this is who I am. I am a penguin, if what you threw out. I am a boy. But that's not true. You are who God says that you are. And if you can hold on to that as your seasons change, as your feelings change, this constant does not. I believe our world is looking for something that will steady them, that will ground them. And it feels very much like they're spiraling right now.
So we're also friends with a gal named Stephanie Cook. You know her by chance?
Steph is one of my best friends, and we have a podcast together called What's Your Story?
I know. I just realized that. I just put all the pieces together. Hannah, I'm a little slow out here in Oregon.
It's all good.
We sat with her too.
Oh, I love Steph.
And in that, we were talking about the Enneagram.
Oh, yes.
She's really big on that. I'm an Enneagram 4. People still subscribe to that channel, still a thing or not. But I bring that even up in this moment because to me, and again, nothing against the Enneagram, I was so stuck on as a 4, it's titled a romantic, depending on, what terminology you want to use in that moment. And I've been a feelings driven person for a long time. Oh, if I feel it, I'm going to do it. If I like that, I'm going to do it. Which can be very dangerous. Very dangerous. I'm going to have to go back and now listen to that episode with Stephanie, your good friend. I think she said in the episode that if you're a 1, you shouldn't marry a 4 or vice versa.
It gets complicated.
It gets real complicated, right?
Right.
So you know who I'm married to for the last 22 years?
Yeah.
A 1.
Yeah.
But there are those people out there that says, listen, I'm a 4. I'm only going to be 4. I can only be a 4. And if people have no idea what the Enneagram is or no idea what I'm talking about, you probably want to go talk to Stephanie or even you. Sounds like when I build my identity around anything, has Hannah ever done that? Has Hannah ever built her identity around just one specific thing that's maybe away from where the identity should be built around?
Absolutely. It goes back to my childhood. So growing up from Kentucky, born and raised there, and my dad was my world. I grew up in church, was a daddy's girl, and my dad ended up in jail for several years of my life. He had a horrific childhood and ended up making some choices that's where it landed him. Here I am, this young girl, and I'm mortified. I remember feeling so embarrassed and ashamed. My dad was in jail. It was just embarrassing. And then my brother, he and I are 11 months apart, so we were in the same grade the way our birthday fell. He would talk openly about it. Shut up, stop talking about this. This is so embarrassing. I took that shame and I overcompensated. I was like, okay, does this mean I'm poor white trash? Is this what this means? Worked harder than anyone. I was a straight A student. I was in the gifted and talented program at school. I was creative. I was athletic. I was above and beyond. And so my identity, it was performance-based. It was high achieving. It was Hannah is the best at everything. And that's what it was. No one else had to drive me. I needed to prove that I wasn't just poor white trash. Truly, that's what it was. I remember deciding to become a Jesus follower, hearing that he loved me, knowing that my daddy was in jail, knowing that I was putting all of myself worth and value in performance. It just changed my life. I started going to the Bible looking for who am I? Am I poor white trash? What does God say about me? And growing up, the denomination that I grew up in was very conservative, didn't have a high value of women. I just remember being like, gosh, now I'm poor white trash and I'm a woman. It doesn't get any worse than that. Slowly learning what God said about me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And so I went from having my identity really being full of shame and then identity wrapped around all the things that I achieved. It was shifting. It was changing, but it was never enough. Going to God and getting those answers, it changed my life. Yes, there were times in my life that I had my identity wrapped in other things that I shouldn't have. And even things like as a military wife, thinking I'm a military wife, I'm a mom and I'm a teacher, but having to refocus and say, no, those are just things that I do. Those are things about me. That's not who I am.
You ever been around 23,500 people?
23,500 people?
That's pretty specific, isn't it?
That is. I don't know if I've been around that many people. I don't know. What do you think?
I'll let you decide that.
Okay.
23,500 people.
Okay.
Now, to help you feel a little more comfortable, there's a giant K in the center of the floor. That's how many people can fit in Rupp Arena in Lexington, Kentucky, by the way.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
okay,
I had to Google it because I was like, that seems like not very many people. Just saying.
Just saying,
Just saying. But in Rupp Arena, where the Wildcats play, by the way, it is a little more than North Carolina. I just figured that out. So Dean Smith Center can only seat 21,750 people.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I should have looked at that first. I feel like the answer really should be the Sunday school answer of Jesus is how do we get our identity back on track?
Yeah.
That is true. I believe that as well. Practically speaking, it's easy to tell a young person, listen, all you need is Jesus. All you need him. Close your eyes, put your hands in the air. That's all you need. I feel like they don't believe us.
Absolutely. One thing that we have to remember is in our culture, in Western society, we are very Roman Greco. And so we talk about belief. It's a philosophy. I believe something. That's not what the biblical faith is talking about. Biblical faith is a verb. It's an action. And so anytime you see the word faith in the Bible, you literally could add an ing. It's something that you do. You are faithing it. So I believe this, therefore I do that. In our culture, we're like, oh, I believe it. No, it's just what you're saying is you think that. If you believe it, then you do it. So when I'm talking about our identity in Christ, I'm asking you to do something. I'm asking you to find those truths. In the book, I have listed them out, and I'm going to actually encourage people to write them down. I am this. This is what God says I am. And I'm going to choose to do it. Because remember, your faith is something that you do, and a choice is something that you can do. So I'm going to say, I'm going to believe that I am made in God's image. I'm going to believe that I am gifted. I'm going to believe that I have a purpose and a plan. I'm going to believe that. For years, I had these, they were Post-it notes and index cards on mirrors and on walls, and as my bookmarks and the books that I read, they were practical things I would write down and I would look at. And it's the same as it's replacing those negative thoughts with positive thoughts. God just had the idea first when he's talking about scripture to renew our mind, to think on the good things. He knows how we're wired. My mom used to tell me, you put trash in, you get trash out, right? That's what we're talking about here. I knew that first. And so he's saying, this is what you are. You're going to choose to believe it. And I need you to see it over and over and over and over and over. And eventually you start to live your life that way. You start to slowly change and believe that. It's not magic. It's not a fast process. It's slow. You have backward slides. You'll still have negative thoughts. What you have now is a list of truths that you can choose to believe. And so when those thoughts come in that say, I'm nothing, you can go, no, this is what God says. And this is true. And I can choose to believe it, whether I feel it or not, because feelings are not facts and feelings will change.
Feelings can sometimes give wrong directions, right?
Yes. They can, and they can be great indicators, and we want to acknowledge our feelings very much. When my children are feeling a certain way, I don't ever want to say to them, you shouldn't feel that. I want to say what you're feeling is real, and what you're feeling, okay, own those feelings. They don't have to inform your next steps. Look at it objectively. Pull yourself out of that feeling in the moment. If you need a pros and con list, do that. Take a moment, step back. Your feelings do not have to determine your actions. Encourage our kids to follow their feelings. Lead some to jail. Not wise to do that.
When I read it, I was like, I don't love that.
Okay.
In fact, it sounds terrible. I need some help. You can do hard things all the time.
Yeah.
Who said that, first off?
So I tell my kids that all the time. You can do hard things. My mom used to tell me that you can do hard things. Find myself in situations. Specifically, as you said that, I went back one of the first deployments my husband had. We were separated for 2 years. He was gone for a year, came home for 2 weeks, which is where my son came from. And then he was gone another year. Those words were, you can do hard things. I don't know if it's always true. Okay, this situation bites, but there's also this part that don't give up so easy. Henry Ford is quoted as saying, whether you can or can't, you're right. Whether you think you can or can't, you're right. There is something about your mindset of believing that you can do hard things and not giving up and not trying for things because you're scared. And it sounds so silly. One of my greatest regrets and it's so dumb. You're going to be like, Hannah, that is dumb. I was an athlete growing up. I was going to be racing against this other girl who I'd heard was super fast. I'd had an ankle injury and was still recovering, and I was scared to race against her. I knew I was fast. I had won other races. I knew I was quick, but was I as quick as her? I don't know. I faked an injury so that I didn't have to race against her. Sounds so dumb. I've always wondered, could I do this? And that would have been a hard thing, but I took an easy way out. Applying to colleges, I wanted to apply to the University of Kentucky so bad. So bad. You're like, ugh, that's where I wanted to go to school. I was scared. I don't know. Could I? And I let fear keep me from doing that, keep me from applying to that school. And so I'll never know. So I think part of that is you can do hard things, is don't let that fear keep you from doing that. Do it anyway. Do the things that scare you. You can do it.
I feel like right now, especially, people don't want to do the hard things.
Right.
I think we're
that.
so equipped. I want my coffee now. I want it fast. I want it hot. I want it now. I mean,
Yes.
Amazon brainwashed us all into 2-day delivery. We got addicted to that. It's been a week, Amazon. Where is my stuff? I don't like hard things. I don't like hard marriages. I don't like hard relationships. I don't like hard friends. I don't like hard seasons in life, basketball or football. I don't like hard things. So when I read that, no, I can't do hard things, Hannah. That's awful.
No, but you can. And perseverance is this mark of faith.
And I don't like that word.
I
don't like that word.
I don't either, but I'm telling you, giving up. I don't want to be a woman who goes to the end of my life and thinks, I took the easy way all the time. And I just don't want to do that. I want to be able to stick it out for my kids. I want to be able to stick it out for the people around me, for my community. I want to be a person who can do hard things for others, who can love others even when it's not easy. I don't want to live a life that's all about me. We know where that gets us in society. It's selfish and bratty, and that's not where I want my life to go. And it's not the vision that I have for my family and my community. Even with my students, say all the time, y'all can do hard things. You can study for this test. You can do it. And one of my favorite you can do hard things stories, I had this student who was from a very difficult family background. He had severe learning disability as well as some physical disabilities. He was missing an eye. He had an issue with his leg and couldn't walk straight. And he came to me as a 7th grade teacher, world history. He was reading at a 1st grade level. And he would tell me, Miss Conway, I'm just dumb. I'm stupid. And I would say, Otis, you are not. No, you are not. You are not. That's not true. Don't speak that over yourself. I would work with him. You can do this. You can do this. And so I found out that he could listen and learn auditorily. I created him a YouTube playlist of the things that I was teaching and added some video for visuals. 80% is what's considered mastery in education, which I tell my parents that I'm like, 80%, your kids don't have to make 100%. 80% is considered mastery. At the end of that school year, that kid had an 80%. He loved Oreo Pop-Tarts. So I would give him these Pop-Tarts. Otis, you did hard things. You did hard things all year and you have mastered the material. And I love that. I love that picture. And that kid just graduated this past year. Proud of him. Like, oh my goodness, he did hard things. And we are typically very proud of the hard things that we persevere through. And while we're persevering through that, we are encouraging others along the way. They're watching, they're being inspired by the things that we're going through.
I think we love the idea of saying, oh, I can do hard things. I mean, Tony Robbins has probably a whole talk on motivational hard things, I'm imagining. I mean, Matthew West even wrote a song about it. He says, what if today's the only day I got? I don't want to waste it. If this is my last shot, no regrets in the end. I want to live like I got no what ifs. Yeah. Run until the road runs out. I mean, all this sounds great. Lighting it up right now. No regrets in the end.
Yeah.
I want to know I got no what ifs. All that sounds great. All that sounds motivational. Practicality. Break it down for me, practicality. Okay. How does Hannah do that? How do you do that? So then maybe others again can follow that example of yours.
Yeah. Sometimes it completely bites. It's hard. It looks like waking up at 5 a.m. to write 500 words, have an article that's due. It looks like working in vocational ministry, getting a phone call, having to go meet a lady who is in crisis and sitting and talking with her. That's what it looks like, having coffee with her. It looks like a sweet friend who broke her ankle on a treadmill. Poor thing. I was like, stay away from the treadmills. Taking her family a meal, taking her a lunch. Looking for opportunities to serve others. But right now, the season of life we're in with our kids growing and moving out and all these changes, it's being intentional about family time. I'm going to guard my weekends so I can be with them. I'm going to guard my evenings to the best of my ability. We're going to play a game at the dinner table. That's what that's going to look like, living my life that way when it's difficult. Now, when challenges come, like we've had some serious situations in our family. We ended up adopting our oldest daughter when she was 16. she was our niece. And so we had some serious family situations. Her biological mother was struggling with addiction. And so it was hard. We had to draw some boundaries with her biological mother, which was so hard. And it's still so hard because that area has not been reconciled. The most loving thing that we could do in that situation was draw that line, take her daughter and care for her and bring her into our family. There were a lot of tears. So that's what that looked like in that moment. What I'm talking about is not rainbows and butterflies and sunshine. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's fun. It really is looking and saying, how can I serve? Even if it hurts, we give financially to different ministries. If I say I believe in this ministry or this service, I'm going to give to it. So it looks like giving my time. It looks like giving my money, investing in the things that I love. I wish I had a neater way to say all of that. Practically speaking, doing hard things means it's going to require your time. It's going to require you to look at other people. It's going to require your money. You might lose sleep. It's also guarding and making sure you're resting. I'm a person who goes 24. So I have to make myself rest. Part of that is knowing my limits too. All right, I have to rest so that I can recoup and get up and do it again. No, that's a lot.
What do you mean that's a lot?
I know. I'm in my head, I'm like, it's a big, broad answer. And there's no cookie cutter response, I think is what I'm saying. And yes, I am a person who smiles a lot. That's just part of who I am. I really think that I've experienced some really difficult things in my life and I have joy. God has helped me through it. I can literally say, didn't want to go through these really hard things in my life, but I'm so glad God used it and has made something good out of it. I can see the good that has come out of these terrible, hard situations. And I want people to hear that. Sometimes doing hard things means I got out of bed today. That's what it means. It means I took a shower when all I wanted to do was lay in bed and cry. I actually made a meal. It means I went for a walk, did something to care for myself. Sometimes that hard thing literally is just getting out of bed when your life feels like it's coming down around you. Don't hear me say, oh, just smile and push through. It is, what is one thing that you can do today that you don't feel like doing, but you know is beneficial? And then do it. Choose to do it.
I think that's the wildcat spirit in you coming out.
I mean, hey, these Kentucky girls, what do we do?
What do you do? I love what you're saying there. I really do, because to me, I think it all comes back down to this idea of what can I do with what's in my hand?
Yes.
As you're sharing these things, that comes to mind for me is tying your shoe.
Yeah. Yes.
Tying your shoe. I don't think about tying my shoe anymore. I don't think about loop, swoop, and pull. I don't think about that. Now, when I go to the driving range, when I go to the golf, I think about all the things that I should be doing. I think, okay, I got to lower my shoulders. I got to do this. I start filling my head. And then what happens? I don't hit the ball, by the way, in case you're wondering.
Yeah.
But tying my shoe, I don't even think about it anymore. It's like breathing. I know it so well. And I hear in that, and what you're saying is it didn't always used to be that way. I remember as a kid crying because I couldn't do it, because I saw others around me doing it. And you're thinking to yourself, why is it they're so easily able to do it and I can't? And I think what I hear you saying that is stop focusing on the others around you in this respect. Stop focusing on the others around you of what they're doing and what they're doing in their life, and they're this and they can make cookies and they're the den mom and they're the room mom, and focus on your shoe and your lace.
That's right.
Get that nailed down. Get that solid where you don't have to think about it. You mentioned there is a book coming out soon. I'm always excited about that. So first off, I want to ask you, and you mentioned even the writing process, kind of getting up early. Sometimes that takes some sacrifice. That takes the hard stuff.
Yeah.
What was the hardest chapter for you to write in that?
Oh my gosh. So the hardest one was the last one. And so I will say this, typically when you write, nonfiction, I was in the fiction world for quite some time. In nonfiction, your stuff gets moved around. You write stuff and then they put it in the order that they want to put it. The last chapter in the book is actually the last one that I wrote, kept it that way, but it's called Called and Commissioned. And it was so hard for me to write. It's a truth that I finally learned how to embrace not long ago. Being a woman in ministry, I didn't realize, this sounds so crazy, I didn't realize that God could call me and commission me as a woman. I always thought, that just meant for men. I thought, oh my gosh, if I believe that, then there are other girls out there that believe that. it was difficult to write. It was just painful to think that I had lived under that lie for so long. And it hurts me to think about all of the other girls that might be living that lie, the effects of that lie. And I just wanted to say, no, you too. All of this is for you too. You are called and commissioned and told to go and told to speak the truth and love to others and to love God and to love people. And so that was the hardest one. It was very emotional for me to write about. Throughout the book, I'm a storyteller. I love stories. I believe stories are super important. And so I tell fun stories. But that one was more serious, me having a very serious conversation with these girls. I need you to get this. It's that important.
One of my favorite things in my closet, there's a lot. And actually, I don't wear it very often. It is a University of North Carolina, I know, shocker, white jersey. And it has a number 4 on it, my favorite number. It took me forever to find this jersey, by the way. But when I found it, I was like, found it, got it, bought it. The letters on it are embroidered. They stand out. And the 4 has kind of this really big number on it. I mean, it's awesome. Of course, it has the Argyle down the side, but it's white. As I mentioned, me and white, we're not friends.
Yeah, I hear you.
Me and white, every time I wear it, it's like, doesn't matter. It's like a magnet. I'm never going to play basketball for the University of North Carolina. I know that comes as a shock to some, and maybe even you in this moment, Hannah, right now. Just never going to happen. Never in the cards. I wear it during basketball season, at home, safe, away from food, away from anything that could spill on it. Every time I put it on, there's a part of me that feels like I'm a part of something special. I think that's why I love Carolina basketball so much. I know the history. I know the tradition. I know the coaching staff that has been through there. I know what they stand for. I know, say what you want about the university itself. The athletic department in basketball is amazing. Okay. But putting that jersey on, even though I'm never going to be on the team, I feel like I'm a part of something special. And I hear in you saying that right now is that girls right now don't maybe feel like they're a part of something special. They feel like they're on that proverbial line that we all remember from elementary school as we all line up horizontally.
Yes.
And we're like, okay, we're going to pick a team. Here we go.
Right.
Everyone starts getting picked. Susie gets picked. Molly gets picked. Stephanie gets picked. Amber gets picked. And Hannah's standing there all by herself, waiting to be picked.
Yeah.
And there is no greater trauma in childhood, I truly believe. Okay, maybe there is some greater trauma. That's up there, of being picked last. Is that how Hannah felt in this moment of being picked?
Yes. Yes, it was like, oh, this was for me too. And I never knew. And there was definitely some like, why did I never know? And I don't think that the men in my life did it maliciously. I really don't. I believe that they just were oblivious. I don't want any girls to live. I mean, I don't want them to be in their 20s before they finally realize, or their 30s, or, their 40s before they finally realize, oh, this is for me too. This is what God says about me too. And I'm not just a person to sit in the bleachers or on the sidelines, that I'm an active participant bringing heaven to earth, to loving God and loving people. It's a game and we're all playing. There are no spectators in the faith life. Like, we are all called to love God and love people and work for justice and mercy.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't bring up your name.
Oh, yes. Full of grace, Hannah.
Well, not only that, Hannah has this amazing story. Hannah from the Bible, that is. Hannah has this amazing story where she wants a child so desperately. Prays and prays and prays and prays. No child. Prays and prays and prays. Still no child. She finally goes to the temple and is like, listen, God, if you give me a child, this is a fast forward version. Listen, if you give me a child, I'll give him back to you. And she does. She conceives and she gives him back. Her sacrifice of giving her child back to God, which turns out to be Samuel, which if Samuel doesn't come on the scene, we don't have a David, in my opinion.
That's right.
And we don't have a lot of other things. So because of Hannah's sacrifice, we don't have these dominoes that then continue to fall. Hannah, I ask you this question. Greatest sacrifice you've given up was what?
I think I'm thinking back to being a young wife. My husband was an infantry soldier and all the deployments to Iraq, having small children. And I don't know how you would say the sacrifice when you give your husband away to go and you don't know if he's coming home. And when you stay at home, and I stayed at home with the kids about 8 or 9 years before I went back to public work and raised them. So I think giving of myself, of my children to raise them, and giving my husband away, doing those things, waiting, supporting him at home, and then mothering and raising our children and holding down that home front. I would say that's my greatest sacrifice, my greatest struggle, my greatest joys, the hardest thing that I did.
I don't think people really understand the sacrifice of that until they've really walked in those shoes as a dependent. Now, listen, I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember there were times of me personally crying at the front door. I do remember multiple times in the late 80s, early 90s of being in my bed wondering if my dad was even alive.
Yes.
Now, we didn't have the privilege of FaceTime in those days. We had to write physical letters and hope that they got there. You know, and I remember the greatest thing was my dad was on a ship. He was on a float, they call it. And he was able to record on a cassette tape and send it back to us so we could actually hear his voice.
That's
and he
precious.
would tell us about things that was going on. And to me, maybe this is where I get a little, defensive perhaps. Yeah. But military families nowadays with all the technology and Zoom and FaceTime and all this stuff, I mean, they got it pretty good. Like back in the early days, not so much. Yeah. We didn't have those cool things like email and things like that.
Right. Gosh, so this was 2003. The war had just started. I mean, we have this crazy love story. We were high school sweethearts, and he graduated a year older than me, went to University of Toledo. Then 9/11 happened, September 11th. I was a senior in high school, and I held on to him as long as I could. He joined the Army and didn't tell me. And then I broke up with him and then married him 3 months later. We've been together over 20 years now, 3 beautiful kids. It was just handwritten letters and phone calls from a payphone. And, I'd have a Nokia cell phone with butterflies on it. It was that. And then there were some webcams that were grainy, and all of that. There would be literally weeks and weeks that I wouldn't hear from him. Oh gosh, just the stories are crazy. As an infantry soldier, just the war and the loss, the friends we lost. It gets me a little emotional. We lost some great people. Those years were so difficult and challenging. He said, I'll call you. And I was like, I couldn't wait. I was pregnant with our son and I was still in college and, couldn't fit in my desk anymore. And I waited and he never called. And it was literally a month. It was like 4 weeks until I finally heard his voice. I ended up dropping one of my classes because my blood pressure was going up and they were like, we got to figure this out. They had been ambushed. They had lost some friends. It had taken that long to restore communication and notify families of all the casualties. And there I waited. And that was so hard to let them go. You don't know when they're coming back. You just don't know when they do the celebration, but it's this bittersweet. They flood in and then they're there, but it's, the ones that aren't. And that is so hard. And then you live with, why did my husband get to live and not the others, right? And then he has to live with that. Why did they live and I didn't? And then it's even like, I'm so thankful my husband came home. Just makes you question all of these things in yourself. And you're like, oh, the hardest things that we did. And I can say after all of it, we still have joy and God is good. And we have went through some dark, dark times, PTSD and TBI. And I didn't know if our marriage was going to make it. He ended up going to Walter Reed for quite some time, and truly by the grace of God, he has pulled through. And the man went from 19 medications to 1. Like, praise the Lord.
Because Hannah, you can do the hard things.
That's right. I saw my parents do it when my dad was in jail. Mama staying with him and working with him. I can do this. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And we did it. And daggone it, I will say, Stephen and I have been through crazy times. I am so thankful that we stuck it out. I'm so thankful that we did the hard things. I'm getting emotional again. The first book that I wrote is called The Wounded Warrior's Wife. Fiction. It's an outpouring of just all this. I just had to get it out of me, right? I just had to write this. And as I was finishing the edits, I asked my husband, and it had been a few years after all of the stuff and the counseling and all of it. I said, hey, how are you doing? And he said, I'm better. He said, I know God loves me. I know that I've been forgiven and I know that I can forgive myself. And I said, how do you know that? And he said, because you loved me when you shouldn't have. And I thought, this is what happens when you do hard things. Things are healed and redeemed and restored. And you have a beautiful relationship that you can show to your kids that was worth fighting for and that your grandkids will see one day. You can do hard things. Or you're crying now.
Well, Hannah, thank you. Thank you for what you shared. And thank your husband for his service for us. Would you please?
Yeah.
That's important to me that we acknowledge that. Yeah. We'll get a little silly so you can let go of the tears.
I know.
We can get a little silly. We do this thing at the end of the show. It's called Senseless. It's these 6 random questions and then We roll a die because we got to make it random. How do you make something random? You gotta roll a die.
North Carolina cup. Oh my God.
That's what I was going to tell you. I tried, because Amber said you're a big Kentucky fan. I tried to get one from Amazon, but they were on back order or they don't sell them. One of the two. I put research on it. Do I need to fire them again? But inside this cup here, there's a die, as you can see.
Let's see it.
So here we go. I'm going to roll for you. But before we get to Senseless, how can someone find out more about you, the book, and all that? Let's do that first.
HannahRConway.com. I would recommend going there and just all the things about me. Instagram is where I'm most active. It's my favorite place to hang out. So find me on Instagram. It's like HannahRConway.author. That's where I'm at.
Awesome. And they can get the book on your website as well?
Yeah, there's a link that'll go to the book. Amazon is, I always recommend going to Amazon. It's where people get books.
Now, I noticed you were a little nervous today that you did forget one spot that the book's going to be. It's okay. I mean, I get it. You were nervous. Amber probably told you some crazy stories about me, but it's also going to be available at opspodcast.com/books that I love.
Thank you
just
so
in case
much.
you forgot.
I appreciate
Because you
that.
forgot that probably, right?
I did. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Totally forgot.
Well, let's do our silliness. It's called Senseless. Again, 6 random questions. Shaking the cup up. Ooh, number 4. Ooh, my favorite question of this season. Number 4.
Oh my gosh.
And notice, what color is that, Hannah? Can you tell?
It's North Carolina blue.
Okay,
It
just
is
checking.
not
That's for the
Kentucky.
audience at home. They can't see the number 4, but you can.
I
So,
can.
Yeah, the die is a North Carolina die. I know that's a shocker to you. It's just a shocker to you. Number 4 is who would play you in your life story? In your life
It
story.
is so funny that you asked that. So I'm going to have to say Drew Barrymore because
I can
hear,
see it.
Yes, so many people are like, I was even in South Korea many, many years ago. And this lady came up to me and was like, Drew Barrymore. And I was like, what is this? Drew Barrymore, if you're listening, girl, play myself in this movie.
The movie Never Been Kissed. That's not true, but you love that movie.
It's one of my anything Drew Barrymore, and I love her movies. Yes, Josie Grossi, love that movie. One of my favorite movies of all time. When my husband and I were younger and dating, he was called Waterboy because they were like, he looks like Adam Sandler, and I was Drew Barrymore.
50 First Dates. There we are.
Yes, that's
Just
right.
bring that back again. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate you being here. Really appreciate Amber and even Stephanie for all the podcast friend connections that we have. So thank you for that.
That's fun. Hey, thank you.
All right, guys and gals, kids and campers alike. That is it. That is all. That is our show today. We made her cry. You know I love that. You guys know that, right? And here's why. Because when you cry, I don't know if you know this, you're sharing something special with somebody. It's a trust level. It's like a trust fall from back in the day, truly. So here's my question. Who's your trust fall? You're like, nope, Neil, that is one hard thing I am not going to do. No trust fall for me. In sight, not happening. But I wonder about that. What's that one thing right now that you're thinking, never, ever, ever going to do that? Can't do that. Won't do that. The hardest thing you can think of. I'll give you mine. It's write a book. Really, truly. Hardest thing, I think. No, never going to do that. What is it for you? What's your hardest thing? Is it maybe forgive that person that did that thing? Is that the hardest thing? Or maybe today is just taking a step forward. You know, she mentioned her husband in the military service. My wife and I have been watching that show SEAL Team. It's on Paramount Plus, and the trauma that these military people have gone through is horrendous. And it's only a dramatic presentation of that. It's way worse in real life. It's that one hard thing for you. Let me know. opspodcast.com is a great place to let me know. You can let us know on the socials at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And last but certainly not least, do not forget, remember when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Stay tuned till next week as we walk in other people's shoes.